time to get geeked up.
But those were all the guests we've had, and I'm saying in our 10-year anniversary, we'll have even more guests we'll be catching up with. But those are some of my favorite moments on the show, man. I got a few more favorite moments. So it is the 5-year anniversary, Liam. I'm saying, but maybe we should take a corny, closer look at some of our favorite moments of the last 5 years. Hit it,
I mean, can I start it off with the Closer Look song?
Yeah, there we go.
Closer look, closer look, closer look. Break out the telescope, then the microscope. All of your other scopes, it's exactly what you hold. We're gonna look real close. Take a closer look, closer look, closer look.
So once again, for the last 5 years, that was old Andre Davi hitting Closer Look.
Closer Look. You know, that Amy D was right. That's a real chocolatey, a smooth chocolatey voice from Andre Davi.
Yeah, that was the original version too, not the Piss Mob remix.
Yeah, we gotta get some Piss Mob remixes going. Big shout out to Piss Mob, y'all. Andre Davi as well, but mostly Piss Mob.
But like we said before we kicked off the Closer Look, all the guests got to come on and talk about their time on the show. This is kind of us now talking about our time on the show, some of our favorite moments. And I guess the guests were a big part of that too. I would say some of my favorite moments doing this show the last 5 years is every time we've had a guest on.
Yes, all of our guys. Just hearing back, it really did remind us how much fun we've had with all of our geeked friends.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just like I said, every time the guests have been on, it's always kind of changed the dynamic of the show a little bit. It's always in a fun way, even if it's us singing Eminem to our friends, cringing everybody out.
Yeah, no, I mean, they've all brought something so different, Ross and Lauren, just even with that, we were so close to them personally. There's, some of our closest friends that we kind of felt more comfortable doing something like that. Whereas then we have friends like, Dennis and Andy, the Geeked Up Boyz, that can really bring their geek expertise to the show. Guys like Mans that have, a whole separate geek obsession that we can share with.
Yeah, and those are some of my favorites too, man. Like Manzi, for instance, just like another guy that has like running a podcast and hearing how crazy his situation is, or Simmons having to because a lot of the times too we had guests on and we kind of talk about it during the interview portion, but like a lot of the times we just made them and tricked them into playing some makeshift game we made up just like a couple hours earlier. And be like, all right, this is what you got to do.
Yeah. I mean, pretty much every time that's what we did.
Well, there was times too with like the Andre Davi time was like one of my favorite times a guest was on also, just because he was kind of taskmaster, as being like, all right, you got 2 more minutes, boys, to finish that song. And like,
no, I mean, we talked about it a little bit earlier, but that really was like in some ways like a little mini, our daydream, our rapper daydream lived vicariously through Andre Davi. You know what I mean? Where like me and you literally got to sit down with the beat and like write rhymes, which, let's face the facts, that's been ever since my early, my high school b-boy days. That's always been something that I wanted to give a try to. So, that really was, in a lot of ways, a little dream come true doing that with Davi.
Yeah, absolutely. And
I don't want to say dream come true might be a little much, but fantasy fulfilled anyway.
5 years later, we're still taking those second MC emails, y'all.
And I guess if we want to talk about the music, we can maybe get back into the guests a little bit, but I guess that would also take us to our original collaborations with Davi, and one of my favorite geeked up memories, but the epic watering hole writing sessions for all. And I guess big shout out to Netta Raw, who's become a friend of ours over the last 5 years, and I guess even before that. But she was the bartender at the Watering Hole, which has become a place.
It was Dennis.
Oh, was that Dennis that was the bartender?
Dennis.
I think it might have been both of them, actually. But even if not, then even a big shout out to Dennis, who's...
Yeah, it was. I'm 100% sure it was Dennis.
Okay, nice. But then even
So
still,
remember
big
Dennis,
shout
like,
out to
calls,
Dennis,
like,
who's
yeah,
a geeked up legend. We should have talked about that
No,
with
for
him,
sure.
but he was the. But the watering hole as well has become a place that's been like a home base for us, you know, in a lot of ways. But super fun sitting down with you and just writing all of those goofy songs with no beat in mind or have any idea that it was ever going to turn out into anything resembling a real song, you know?
Turns out I was. I don't know if I'm a good, because they all kind of turn out to be like rap songs and R&B songs, but I was definitely doing it in the vein of a Weird Al. Every other word has to rhyme, kind of.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I would say definitely, much like me and you, much like our personalities in general, Weird Al meets Biggie Smalls is pretty much,
Yes.
it's pretty much where I'm coming at you from anyway. I don't know who you're. You're a little more Dirty South. You're maybe Weird Al. You're more of like a Jerky Boys meets Cash Money Millionaires kind of guy. But
I don't know, man. I think you would find that Weird Al probably has a way bigger presence in the South than he does.
Yeah, than the Jerky Boys, but that was a super fun, you know. And then when we actually got to hear the finished product by Davi, as we've talked about throughout the special a couple times already, but that really was, like I said, a fantasy fulfilled or a dream come true. But when we actually heard like the professionally done takes, and they were so much better than we could have ever imagined, it was really cool to to feel like we took part in a goofy parody song anyway.
That was a fun one, man. That one was a lot of fun. Of course, there's other fun times too, because like we said in the interview portion, but like Dennis and Andy, the Geeked Up Boyz was a hilarious time where they sabotaged our show. But also, man, the couple times that they were on by themselves, you know, like Andy still made the email rule that we use to this day.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, and anytime we had a Star Wars thing going on, we had to have Dennis on.
No, and Dennis, honestly, very apropos, like we were just saying, that he was the bartender at the hole that night because, you know, just kind of going through the last 5 years, but dating back to literally the first episode where you were, you know, coordinating ticket sales with him for the Star Wars come release, and, you know, him at halftime of Monday Night Football with us recording and, you know, in another ticket scalp situation. But, you know, Dennis has been our first Facebook like. He's been a huge part of the show throughout the last 5 years, as well in the Zoom rooms, like you said. And Andy was a super fun. We talked about it on the with their interview, but I think the Andy Alf DVD, one of the highlights of the last 5 years of my life. Andy's dumb, confused look about Alf, yeah, oh, thanks. No idea.
Dude, that was one of those laughs that totally were like we were expecting to laugh for one reason and totally shifted forces. Like, oh, this is gonna be so funny when we hand this guy an Alf DVD and he's gonna be like, "Classic guys, thanks a lot." And he was just like,
you got me. We like
So I
I
don't
wrapped
need to
it
watch
and stuff.
season one to catch up. Like, no.
Yeah, I know. Seriously,
Season one.
you're looking at this way too literally right now, buddy. I guess another one of my favorite guest moments, but Simmons, as we talked about, we didn't really get too much into it in the interview, but really one of my favorite moments in the last 5 years was Simmons not having the answers prepared for his trivia contest, where we told that dope to prepare questions, and then when it came down to give the answers, he was like, "Oh, I don't know. I don't know the population of Tulsa. I was just coming in with brain busters." That...
All right, it was like, what's Rand's bad cavern? He's like, I don't fucking know.
I know. Yeah, like...
And then when he finally did figure out the answers, then he wouldn't tell us. Be like, all right, so what is it? He's like, I'm not telling you.
Not so easy, my friend. It's the fucking podcast answer. What do you...
Yeah. Dude, that's definitely a behind the scenes and favorite guest moment too, because it was definitely like, all right, step aside. I guess I don't even want to say it's a favorite guest moment, but I just think the only moment of maybe just pure fucking insanity on the show is gotta be the Punjab moment. Because like my head not believing what I'm hearing.
Yeah, dude. Ron the waiter was definitely as he is on the Zoom room, he's a force of nature. But having Ron the Waiter on the podcast really is like going through like an extreme camping trip, you know, where like as you're going through it, it's like, Jesus Christ, this is fucking terrible. And then afterwards, you look back like, man, remember that crazy time where we had Ron the Waiter on the podcast?
Can't believe we survived that.
Yeah, exactly. Like as the years go on, I grow more fond to the memories, but. Having a drunk, having Ron, like Ron the Waiter drunk off like a flask of cheap vodka in your fucking closet in front of your bathroom was it was a challenging hour and a half,
but definitely a big one. Definitely one of those times we broke too. You know, we did sports instead of geek culture, but like I said, and we played the clip too. It was just the Punjab was just jaw-droppingly insane.
Yeah. Punjab. I guess another time we broke format and kind of mashed up with the sports world, but we heard. I guess we ended the parade of guests with the Seinfeld Night crew, but the whole Seinfeld Night experience was definitely a true highlight over the last 5 years of the podcast, as well as my life, let's be honest. But really, we talked a lot about it, but that was really such an amazing whole night and experience and all.
Yeah, it really was. The Geeked Up Boys going out and, it's one of those things that, like, let's be honest, we were going to do anyway, podcast or not, would be wearing fluffy shirts and wigs. But it definitely felt like a podcast moment, too, just like, obviously, we're big Seinfeld and Curb fans, so like to be there, and then the friend get to go on, and then have an accountant Mike be on and try to trivia us. I think the only thing we went wrong with the Seinfeld Night is not making a Geeked Up podcast sign.
Yes, great call, actually. Where was our Geeked Pods at Twitter signs? That would have been all over us.
Hashtag Seinfeld Night.
But you're right, man. It really was. Me and you are obviously friends, and we hang out like that. We hang out and whatnot. But that was a weird time where we were hanging out, but it really felt more like a whole podcast.
Absolutely.
You know, just because it felt like we were entertainers throughout the whole night. You know what I mean? Just everywhere we went, we were getting like high fives, and we were so the center of attention with all of our goofy signs. Like I've been to literally like 100 Mets games, and I've never been like the center of attention for 1 minute at one of those games. You know, and then this from like the moment we got on the train, we were like, you know, we talked about it on the show, but we really were like, it was like being like an A-list celebrity for the night, where just everywhere we went was like, literally, we got like, if Jim Brewer was at the game, like we would have gotten more high fives than Jim Brewer. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. 100% agreed. Or he would have demanded to meet us, been like, "Can I meet those guys?"
And then, of course, really spilling on to the field with my good friend Framsky, who, of course, a little bit more of a cool moment for me, just being friends with him for the last, 15, 20 years or whatever. But making it to the field, meeting Jerry, the whole contest and all, just really was like, it would have been an epic night anyway, but really just like, beyond epic night for the Geeked Up Boys. On what was Geeked Up Weekend at Citi Field, because we were talking about it really all season long about how we were going to do it, but there was like Stranger Things and Batman Day like that weekend as well. So it was like a running joke for months, and then it just all played out so perfectly.
The next day for sure. Because I said we could have recycled our 11 wigs and gone the next night.
I literally missed Fish at Fenway for that fucking, but it was one of the best nights of the last 5 years of the Geeked Up podcast. But
yeah, that one was a lot of fun, man. I would say some of my other favorite moments this last 5 years is kind of starting some of this new stuff too, man. Like I'm super proud of the Netflix and Chat spinoff show. Hasn't quite made it to 5 years yet, but a fun idea.
But we're heading in on almost like our, second year, coming up onto coming a little ways away, but coming up, relatively speaking, on 2 years, or a year and a half anyway. But as well, a real opportunity to enjoy some horrible Netflix movies that we otherwise would not have.
And Romo.
Yes, as well as Roma. But, I mean, I'd say for me, I guess, the big Netflix and chat get has been XOXO. Still doesn't really get better than that for your boy Big LW anyway.
I'm going to give the people a little behind-the-scenes thing. Remember we did the unaired trial run. We didn't even do a Netflix movie. We watched A Star Is Born and reviewed that off on mic. But, like,
wow.
You know, that was our, like, cracking the egg and seeing, like, how the show would go. Before we actually did Roma, we actually...
Interesting. I totally forgot about that, dude. That's right though, because I guess it was right around our Oscar special, so we had both seen it for doing the so we could talk about it for the Oscar special or whatnot. But yes,
for sure, yeah. Never, the unaired, because it's not a Netflix thing, just a trial run, just cracking the eggs and seeing how they stick, kind of. But I also think that was probably the original. Spoiler alert: Bradley Cooper dies at the end. And then we actually used that for the Oscar special.
Okay, yes. Yeah, for sure. No, definitely. Probably brought a lot of that. But I'd say other than that, though, what's been like your favorite out of all the bad Netflix movies? Spencer Confidential, Outlaw King,
one of our
Wrong
newest ones,
Missy.
Bandersnatch.
Huh?
Bandersnatch was pretty hilarious of just, two different experiences we had. There was definitely a new one.
That was an interesting one. The whole Bandit Time Loop trilogy, where we watched where the cosmic synergy led 3 horrible movies to like somehow being a trilogy of one another.
The horror movie, the one horror movie I think we did in the tall grass was pretty hilariously awful. Which I guess that was also part of. Was that not a part of the Time Loop trilogy?
I think that was part of the. I think that might have been the final conclusion of the. I don't know, because the Bandit Time Loop trilogy, like, didn't it spill even into the Ridiculous 6? Did we watch 2 trilogies? Because there was also the...
Yeah, no, the Ridiculous 6 was part of, I think, Moments in Time history trilogy, because we had the Kevin Costner, Woody Harrelson...
yeah, that's right. We had, like, our Assholes of Time trilogy, where they showed...
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, that's right. We had that trilogy as well. But yeah, Into the Tall Grass, that was we got to find out how terrified Stephen King was of the letter C, as well as what a fucking as well as what an anchor his stupid son has been on his career in our
For sure, man.
As well, there's been some good ones, though. You know what I mean? As we've watched, like you mentioned earlier, we got to kick it all off with Roma. As well, along the lines, we've had The Irishman, Stranger Things, even of...
fucking Tiger King.
Yeah, I was going to say, even recently, Tiger King, of course. So, Netflix has done right by us. For sure, but even like you said, when we started that whole show, kind of the idea was to look into some of the more, to have a balance of some of the more obscure, random ones, and in my book, that's really worked out way better than any of the legitimate ones.
For sure, man, for sure. And since I guess one of my favorite things about the Netflix and chat thing too is your rating system is always hilarious. So looking back on the last 5 years, how do you think the Netflix and chat Liam rating system would how would the Geeked Up podcast fare?
Oh yeah, I mean that's a good call. I mean, I guess if I had to assess the last 5 years of the Geeked Up podcast with my Netflix and chat rating scale, of course, which if you're not familiar, if I really, really like it, I give it a Stone Cold Steve Austin hell yeah.
Hell yeah!
If I really don't like it, I give it the David Alan Grier, Damon Wayans, Men on Films.
Hated it.
If I really, really hate it, I give it the Nick Cage from Mandy. And if I really, really love it, I guess there would be a Rarefied Air, I guess, as only heard once before on Netflix and chat for me from the Tiger King. And as well, I guess you snuck one in with the Stranger Things Season 3. But
yeah.
I guess, and I'd say you'd probably have to jump in here with me because I imagine this is a unanimous decision on the Geeked Up podcast. But we're giving the last 5 years of the Geeked Up podcast a Rudy's dad.
Oh yeah, Rudy's dad.
This is the most beautiful sight piece of ice I've ever seen.
Are you going Nick Cage horror screamer? But no, of course, we're giving the Geeked Up podcast first 5 years a Rudy's dad.
This is the most beautiful sight piece of ice I've ever seen.
Yeah, I'd say so. Much like this feels like a very self-serving Joe Simmons calling his old podcast hilarious. But
yeah, for real. If Simmons got to judge his, rate his podcast.
Yeah, easily. So, I mean, that's one of the things we've been doing. And then also, I mean, it's been fun to be doing the I guess one more thing about the Netflix and chat, too. It has brought us a new Andre Davi song. Nice and quick, but to the point.
Yes, that's right. More Davi cuts.
More kitschy questions. But the other things we've been doing, too, which has been a lot of fun, like we've kind of talked about earlier, beginning of the episode, but the Friday night Zoom rooms we've been doing has been I got to say, a great idea on our part.
Great idea and a lot of fun, and a big thanks to everybody that's been attending. You know, we got some we've got some diehards, your Shizons, your of course even Ron the Waiters, your Yoons, your
Dennises, your Amy D's, your
Netta Raws, your Rosses. Some of, like we said, some of the voices you've heard before, some of them you haven't, but it's been super fun. Accountant Mike, of course. So it's been super fun seeing them every Friday. As well, it's been super fun keeping everybody company, mostly me and you. But over the last couple months here with Coronaville, as we've kept the podcast going and kept up to date on the the impact on the geek world and what's been going on, it's really given us, it's just on a personal level, it's really given me something to do and been the best and most important thing in my life over the last couple of months here, getting through Coronaville. So I wouldn't have been able to get through the last couple months without you, buddy, and the whole Geeked Up podcast, you know, audience and all the folks out there that are listening and enjoying along, and you know,
for sure, man. I mean, I would have been fine, but you know, I'm glad this was able to help you and all of them.
Yeah, I know, for sure.
No, for real, man. It's been and not even the last couple of months, the last 5 years, man. This whole thing has just been a lot of fun, and like kind of watching it grow and getting all of our friends and like different guests on and getting, you know, listens and feedback. The whole thing's been a total fucking blast, and I look forward to keep on doing it, you know.
Yes, absolutely. For like everybody said, despite the fact all of our friends forgot to congratulate us, they pretty much all shoehorned in 5 years to come, next 5 years. So we'll keep track if any of those assholes remember to congratulate us on the 10-year reunion, because they all claimed they would, but...